Hi and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of March 23rd, 2020. Just to quickly recap predictions for the previous week. As far as the direction of the stock market, I was correct on 2 days out of 5. I basically thought that the market will be going down for the first 4 days and it will turn to up on either Thursday afternoon or Friday. And in fact, the market had gone down on Monday and Wednesday, and then it actually went up on Thursday, which I guess I was thinking there was a good chance of that. But then on Friday, it went down again. And I thought Friday would be an up day. And then a couple other predictions that I made. One just has to do with this general ongoing background influence, where we may expect increased earthquakes, disasters, basically death or removal of important leaders or prominent persons, reshuffling of the types of the governments and corporations, etc. And we had some news previously, I guess last week, that I guess in Russia they had passed some sort of constitutional amendments that removed presidential, basically, or rather reset the presidential term limits, which will then allow Putin to run again for president in 2024. And also there was news about famous singer and actor Kenny Rogers dying at the age of 81. As far as variety of earthquakes, like I said, there's influence, and the long-standing predictions that I made about increased earthquakes in general was something that had been already ongoing and will remain in place for this entire year. However, I specifically made predictions for the end of March, and particularly increased and even, I guess, stronger sort of increase in the potentially either stronger earthquakes or increased number of earthquakes for March 16th through the 31st. And particular dates that I specified were 19th, 22nd, and then 29th through 31st. And we had quite a few earthquakes, 6.0 in Tonga on the 17th of March. On the 18th of March, we had 5.2 in California, and then 5.7 in Utah, which was the strongest there since 1992. On the 20th of March, there was several relatively large earthquakes, 4.5 rather, in Nevada, 5.7 in China, another 5.5 in Mongolia. Then on the 21st, 5.7 in Greece. On the 22nd, which is again the date I specifically picked out, we had this 5.4 earthquake near Zagreb in Croatia, and that was the strongest earthquake there in 140 years. And on the 23rd, which is actually Monday, and I'm recording this on Monday, I saw there was news that the past 24 hours or so, there were there was a swarm of earthquakes, around 7 earthquakes across Oklahoma, while the earthquakes themselves were fairly, I guess, low as far as their amplitude, I guess, or magnitude rather, 1.6 to 2.5, but the fact that it was a swarm in such a short period of time, I guess, is unusual. And as I mentioned already last week, and it continues on to this next week, I guess 2 weeks or so, we will actually experience intensification and even stronger, potentially like a really major earthquake or something really of significance that will still, I think, is ahead of us. And in particular, 29th through the 31st are the dates where something may come up again, like a massive earthquake. And then further into early April, I guess, or April 3rd, seems to be an important date to watch out for as well. Let's see, for other news, again, just to make it really brief, I did mention that for the US, the time was sort of ripe for continuing increase of this pandemic, or in general focus on anything topics that have to do with like oil, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. And also for spread of like lies and disinformation. And I also mentioned that the 22nd of March may see some sort of important news about like a cyber attack. And obviously some of this you could probably predict without astrology, just the fact that, we have this pandemic and things are, a number of cases is increasing. It's not, I guess, a very extraordinary thing to predict. However, yes, we did have over the past month, for the past week rather, the number of cases have increased by many thousands. At the same time, there was specifically news, again, I'm just kind of scanning headlines. On the 18th, there was news that Prestige Ameritech, the biggest maker of the medical face masks in the US, specifically warned about the increasing number of like fraudulent cases where companies, or I guess people who are trying to basically take advantage of the situation, they set up fake websites and they use this Prestige Ameritech's sort of information and try and pose as either that company or its employees to, I guess, sell some counterfeit products. And we did not, at least I didn't see any news about any sort of cyber attack on the 22nd of March. However, I did see news on the 16th that U.S. Health and Human Services Department computer system was apparently hacked on Sunday night, and there had to be like a National Security Council had to step up, and I guess on Twitter, I think they had to post that basically the news of mass quarantine in the US was fake news. So here we have both kind of combination of fake news kind of spreading and some news about the cyber attack, although again it was on the 16th rather than the 22nd, and I didn't see anything on the 22nd. So moving on to this week's predictions. As I already briefly mentioned, continued probability of like major earthquakes, disasters, including problems with, say, nuclear power plants or old buildings collapsing, or problems with leaders, especially who are old, have been in power for a long time, and this may relate to both governments and corporations. Basically, reshuffling at the top, important people stepping away or being replaced, potentially in a violent way. We had, I guess, some news about like, Rand Paul, first senator in the US, getting testing positive for this coronavirus. We have some other leaders of the world self-quarantining themselves, like Angela Merkel. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that any of them will necessarily die, but the fact that older people are affected by this virus, and again, this particular influence astrologically also specifically targets people who were either old physically and or just powerful and in power for a long time, and sort of their time is coming up, and either they themselves need to change dramatically as far as their energy, or they will have to step down, or they themselves may feel like, okay, this is not their time, and they just will themselves, remove themselves peacefully. But it's more about the fact that this is the time where sort of old, outlived forces are changing one way or the other. And there's also this long-term influence. I posted it at my blog at lasunka.com, and that's something to look for, I guess, for China. Again, this is this sort of one of those background influences, slow, ongoing change, but starting from about March of 2020 through January of 2021, and especially late April through early June of this year, and then late December 2020 through early January of 2021, we will have basically transiting Saturn going over China's ascendant, and this may bring increased focus on various reforms, announcement of new goals, like long-term goals, new vision, new projects, again, long-term projects, new leadership, participation in new international organizations, or changing a status under which they're participating, new governmental structures or regulations. So Saturn brings, again, focus on large corporations, regulations, losses, constrictions, as well as building something that's meant to stand sort of the test of time, something that's like really large scale, like some sort of a, like a dam or tunnel or bridge. So something that At this time, what they may experience is something if maybe a person or a party or corporation, something or someone that have been in power, the multiples more or less of 7, so like 7, 14, 21, approximately 28, 29 years, that those powers or buildings or structures or companies may experience fairly dramatic changes, again, in their like goals, what they're planning to do, how they're structured, and at the same time, the new sort of a new approach, new tasks, new innovative, I guess, innovations or new projects, new companies that may sort of be announced at this time. In China, again, they may stay in place or be developed for a really long time, maybe like a 7-year-old project, or if they are announced and they come to power or a change is made, again, this could be a long-term change that may well stay in place for the next, Saturnian cycle, which would be around 29 years or so. And particular areas that may be affected, it may involve specifically IT, telecoms, aerospace, any sort of innovation, high-tech, AI, social media platforms, internet, data processing, etc. So anything that basically is not really considered to be it's like a distributed sort of architecture, like internet. We have multiple nodes of things, or organizations where you have multiple members that more or less share equal, power. Any sort of situations like that, they may experience again either a new approach, or if there was an innovation that has been previously in some sort of a lab, now it can be put into production on the industrial scale, and again something that will stay and be used for again many years. So let's see then other predictions. As far as the ongoing influences, I already mentioned certain things kind of stay in place, all the shakeups at the top, earthquakes, quite significant, especially through, I'd say, April 3rd and especially end of March and this week as well. And for US, we have an important time where we will see increased focus on international agreements, negotiations, diplomatic relations, sort of retail sales, communication, transportation industries in the US. And again, there may be major changes from about January 27, 2020 through about December 7, 2021, and particularly February 14th through July 7th of 2020, and then November 16th through December 12th, and again, in particular, March 20th through 29th can be a significant period, again, for like communication, transportation companies, media outlets, retail sales. Of course, we here, obviously, there are problems for like US, and not just US, but airlines. And indeed, we may indeed hear about bankruptcies, or at least an end of some sort of a cycle, problems with taxes, concerns about loans, rates, death, spying, or hacking. So any sort of really important businesses or entities in these areas, which again are retail sales, communication, transportation, media outlets, as well as just partnerships and negotiations with other international companies, or maybe some sort of trade, international trade, they may see something ending, maybe a new agreement, or we may hear about bankruptcies, problems with taxes, or those businesses needing to take on more loans, etc. So other companies that may be involved, or other areas may involve trash, recycling, nuclear power, as well as coal and or mining companies. Other areas that may be affected, or maybe the topics that may be kind of discussed where these areas may receive additional scrutiny, involve maternal health, procreation, sexually transmitted diseases, or safety of children. So there may be again an ending of some sort of cycle where an old approach is perhaps being reconsidered and new approaches being put in place, or an old leader, for example, may come back, like the person has been retired and then they come back and or there may be some major reorganization or restructuring of a business or task or project in one of these areas. And the restructure may be needed because of the sort of focus on the increased controls or increased protections or increased kind of safety efforts to prevent spying or hacking, to improve homeland security, or to improve safety of women and children. There may also be news, again, that's for US long-term influence about kind of more controls or stricter controls imposed on financial flows, real estate investments, and food production. Again, that will be to ensure kind of more stability, more security, safer, perhaps better quality of food or food safety. At the same time, there may be concerns about reduced cash flow, changes in taxes, or including sales tax, insurance fraud, debt loans, kind of concerns about, again, maybe that will have to do with, again, bankruptcies and inability to pay taxes, or because of businesses suffering, they will get like a tax break. And particularly March 20th through 31st in the US may see increased focus on these areas. And so some specific announcements could include like a large retailer comes under an attack or suffers financial loss, or communication transportation business is under duress due to some harsh governmental controls. This is a similar prediction that I made sort of for past week, and this will be in place throughout, say, the end of next year. It will just be like, again, a slow, gradual change, but this particular week and the next week we will see kind of intensification of these sort of topics. So like major restructuring of large corporations, especially in the areas related to communication, transportation, and or retail and food safety, nuclear power, mining. So it's like production basically, and these businesses may either fall down, or they will require restructuring, or they will require loans. Then again, for the US, there's also all week we have this influence, especially it will be strong on the 21st of March and 26th of March, that will see likely increased concerns about earnings, finance, social services, and healthcare. So there may be worries about leaders in this area. So maybe leaders' health themselves, and that they're affected somehow, or that the leaders are not doing enough to kind of help the needy, like those who need social services, for example, or that the leaders' actions are like rash, aggressive, and actually that they're engaging in too kind of risky activities that are too risky, and therefore they're undermining the efforts of companies in those areas, such as they're hurting the earnings, they're not really being helpful to healthcare providers, or that they're affecting banks somehow in a negative manner. So there's some conflict between businesses, again, related to like finance, healthcare, social services, and some upset at the leaders who either themselves, like I said, are sick, or the leaders are going about doing things in a harsh manner, being too aggressive, taking on too many risks, and ultimately, may cause some problems for these businesses, including loss of earnings. For China coronavirus outbreak, as I mentioned before, I believe that based on what aspects are transits are to the China's chart, that we will still see additional waves of this issue kind of coming back, and that actually the worst time or the more significant time will be August through November, and not until like early to mid-November is when we will actually see finally things wrapping up for good. And in particular, November 9th through 13th may see some important announcements, which could be something along the lines of like reforms that are made in China, and again, including like healthcare, chemicals, or how things are handled, hospitals, any of these kind of facilities, and sort of the final changes made at that time. As far as oil prices, I think it will continue to be in focus for another 2 weeks or so, where there may be some important changes and probably suppressed oil prices overall, and there may be some announcements of note regarding oil prices on March 24th, 27th, April 3rd, and then 12th. And then looking further into the summer, I would also pay attention to June 8th through the 15th, and especially within that period, June 10 and 11, where there may be announcements related to oil, chemicals, as well as healthcare and gas, beverages, wet weather, and basically all these Neptunian topics. But specifically for oil and like coronavirus, I would say we may hear either about maybe increased sort of either wave where we have another outbreak somehow, or an attack on, like, say, oil refinery, or fire at an oil rig, or like fire at a marina, or explosion maybe of a, say, volcano that's on the island somehow. But this combination of fire and water, or fire and, you know, gasoline or oil, fighting over oil. So all of that may potentially bring market down, especially in June 10 and 11. So for the direction of the market this week, I believe Monday through Wednesday will be down, and then Thursday, Friday, I give it about 55% chance that the market will go up. And that would be mainly due to some positive news potentially out of the US, and then also globally, about either some improvements in earnings and or financial aid being provided to businesses in certain areas, especially related to international shipments, multinational corporations, higher education. So then looking at specific dates, Monday through Wednesday especially, let's see, not Monday through, but rather the 21st through 23rd, so I guess it's Saturday through Monday. As I previously mentioned, there was increased this tense period, especially with the 22nd, having increased probability of major disasters, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, etc. I didn't hear about any attacks, but we did have this major earthquake in Croatia. And then let's see, I didn't hear about any cyber attack in the US on the 22nd, but there was this news about the potentially attack on HHS, cyber attack on HHS on the 16th. However, I did also predict March 21st through 23rd for US that there may be increased probability of either US being accused of like spying and hacking, or vice versa, US accusing some other countries about either hacking, spying, or using debt rates to manipulate or pressure one or more parties involved in negotiations. I didn't again hear about or didn't see any headlines specifically referring to this. I know there is this back and forth between like US and China basically about who had, I guess, contributed to the release of the coronavirus, but I'm not sure that this qualifies as the manifestation of this energy. Perhaps there was some hacking news, but I just missed that. Let's see, for US also March 25th, which is Wednesday, is a significant date where we may see concerns about businesses and or projects related to immigration, higher education, lawyers, judges, long distance transportation, travel. There may be some disagreements or arguing about laws and regulations, such as there may be some decision made by the government to prevent the movement of goods or people, and it may be heavily criticized, and or there may be general disruption in these areas, such as, you know, stop like processing people's documents so they can't travel, or kind of blocking, preventing, you know, maybe suspending more of public transportation or even airlines, disruption in travel, disruption in education and immigration, or processing of legal cases, some sort of concerns about law, higher education, long distance travel and transportation. Then on the 26th through the 28th, there actually may be slightly more positive tone in the news, and that's globally. There may be some positive news about either improved earnings or financial aid being provided to businesses, especially, as I said, related to international shipments, multinational corporations, or higher education areas. And optimism may be due to either improved international collaboration among various businesses in these areas, or government providing support, or support may be provided through loans, like a reduction of debt, or help with investments or with rates. And this may basically bring about hopeful mood, which I believe may lead market to go up on Thursday and Friday, at least in short term. And or regulations may be announced, again, that's globally, that might make it easier to either get a loan or pay debt. And again, especially in the related to like higher education loans, taxes, or maybe get insurance cheaper. So then moving kind of as sort of the next couple of weeks, I believe that this really, really stressful influence will continue through about April 3rd, with March 31st and April 3rd being kind of the more critical dates, where there may be like a massive earthquake, major disaster, and or market may seriously go down. Also on the 3rd of April, additionally, we may hear more important news about like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, oil, gas, chemicals, water poisons, or some sort of a deceptive activity. And then, as I already previously mentioned, that June 8th through 15th may see, like after this April 3rd, we may actually see a little bit more of a stabilization as far as the epidemic situation. But then mid-June, there may be another wave of concerns, and both about oil and healthcare or epidemics. And at that point, there might begin a sort of a market drop due to these concerns. So let's see. Right. So I guess that's about wraps it up for me for this week. I hope this was not too awfully boring and too long, and you'll come back and watch another video next week. Until then, have a great time and stay safe out there. Bye.